welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and live stream. I'm Jessie Lezak, CMO at BDEX, along with David Goki, who is GoTech's founder and CEO, filling in for David Finkelstein today. Thanks for being with us, David Goki.
Yeah, thanks. It's great to fill in for David Finkelstein.
Absolutely. Yes. And so David, welcome to the show. And, I really appreciate you hosting with us. And, I want to ask you before we bring our guest in, if you could also just introduce yourself a little bit to the audience and tell them your background with data.
Yeah, great. Well, my name is David Goki, and for 10 years, I was in big tech focusing on data science. And in pre-show, we were actually talking about NLP, or natural language processing, which is now big LLMs and big data. So I enjoy everything from processing big data in the cloud to medium-sized data to your small data in your Excel sheets and in your dashboards. So I love data. And then I studied analytics too to drive business outcomes. So we actually hosted on the show before when both you and David Finkelstein were out with the other David DW. So it's a pleasure to be a co-host with you today now. Such a pleasure.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us. And today on Deconstructing Data, we're also excited to welcome on Ashley Moser. She is co-founder and chief commercial officer at MelodyArc. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us. Let's bring you in.
Hello. Great to be here. Excited to be on a special episode with David hosting, it sounds like.
Yes, co-hosting. Yeah, Ashley, it's great to have you here on this show today. So to kick us off, could you tell us just a little bit about your background and what led you to your work at MelodyArc?
Yeah, sure. Great to meet everyone. Ashley, co-founder and chief commercial officer of MelodyArc, as Jessie mentioned. MelodyArc, we've built an orchestration layer for data, AI, and people. What led us there? What a long, fun story to go through, but I'll keep it short. Before working at MelodyArc, I worked with both of my co-founders at a large Fortune 2 retailer where we were working on an internal startup there. And we loved working together. That company shut down. We all went our separate ways. But we had all worked at these large enterprises in both, I think interestingly for everybody here, in both technology and data science, but also in operations. So all of us had either had a frontline operations role or ran frontline operations teams before we moved over to the tech side. And we just we loved the stuff that we were building. And we saw how much promise technology has for the frontline, how much it already does do for the frontline, but there was always just a little bit missing. How can we actually get this to totally work for our frontline teams? And so we, left to build essentially the platform of our dreams, which are good or, nightmares or great dreams, depending on the person you are, and have since been doing that for 5 years.
Wow, 5 years.
When you say it like that, yeah, it seems like a long time.
It's not too long, but considering, I guess, AI, it's been around a long time, but it's really been popularized in the last 5 years. So I'm sure it's been an exciting time.
We were actually really lucky in that regard. We started building the platform, I think I was telling you guys a little bit, 6 to 9 months before GPT was released. And so we always knew what we wanted to do, but we never really knew how we were going to do the last 10%. And lo and behold.
You've learned that humans are still very much needed and involved in AI. And many of us have learned this, and some of us the hard way, which, by the way, if you're tuning in, we would love to hear from you in the comments. Please be part of the conversation. Join with your questions and your comments. We want to know how you keep a human in the loop or have human oversight. So our first topic, Ashley, could you kick us off on it? It's human oversight ensures data accuracy in AI.
Sure. So, with all the advents in technology in the last 5 years, a lot of things have stayed the same, which is we want to trust the outputs that we are getting from our data systems. We want to, we spend a lot of time getting our metrics and our data into shape to tell us what happened. But I think as business leaders, we acknowledge that what we really want the data to do is tell us a story. Tell us the story of what has happened to our customers, to our clients, to our users, to our tasks. And how do we do that? You have to have multiple data sources, kind of seeing what's going on there, and you have to trust the output. And so it's important to keep people in the loop in doing that. And especially important as you're starting to even move down the value chain there in terms of actioning the data afterwards as well.
So good. I love that. It reminds me of my days at Microsoft, and we had all these PhDs, and it was really great because I don't have a PhD. But if you're in data and you study mathematics, you know that about 80% of your job is actually cleaning the data. What do I mean? Like looking at blank columns, blank rows, etc. And sometimes AI is really good at that. But what it's not good at doing is telling a good story. And you've heard a story from AI or some voice, agent that you're like, oh yeah, is this a human? No, it sounds like it's an AI. I'd rather hear a story from a human like yourself. So I'm glad that you're on the show and that this isn't like your AI telling us a story.
Yeah.
So I'm curious though, how do you continue to kind of manage the sniff tests, right? We used to call this a sniff test, like if it smells like, and it looks like it, and it, it might not be that accurate. So we'd always ask ourselves, like, okay, you just told us that like 99% of our revenue is coming from trial conversions to enterprise. Does that sound right? Or did you mean it the other way around, that 99% of our data is actually enterprise driving revenue? So those types of things, like just common sense, like stepping away from your machine, going for a walk, and asking yourself, like, is that story actually viable? Does common sense tell me that that's a real story? So I'm curious, how have you integrated humans in that storytelling process to make sure that, oh yeah, this actually is a real story?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, people come in with a hypothesis,
Yes.
and the making sure obviously that passes the sniff test is really important. Now, something that AI is super good at doing that we all know is doing scale, doing a bunch of things that, like 10, 100xing our people and doing things much larger and faster than our teams could do. Now, the outputs, do they pass the sniff test? That's a good question. So one of our implementations is working with a large retailer on analyzing their customer journey. In the old school days, that would be like, one person with a tiger team, maybe 2 or 3 people pulling a bunch of data, a bunch of customer transcripts, running through those, sampling maybe 1,000 out of 100,000 in a day, and generating what they think is the answer to their hypothesis. What's great now is that AI can go and grab all of those customer journeys when we set up these implementations, and go grab all of those customer journeys, ask qualitative questions of it. Great. Now we have an output. Now, David, to your point, what is the sniff test? Does that actually make sense? First of all, you still have to have like teammates that are really smart who can ask those questions and know the answer to them and have a really good feel on their customers or users. But the other thing that's really cool about implementations is we'll actually bring back those journeys. You can go in and sample every single one of them and understand why that happened. And so, as somebody who is getting the data and being responsible for the data, because at the end of the day, it's still a person that's responsible for it. Essentially, like, you have that team of 5 that is going and sampling all this data for you, but you're actually getting the whole population while still being responsible. You got to go check it and make sure it's right at the end of the day. That hasn't changed.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. That reminds me of a very simple mathematical concept called statistical significance. And 30 is not enough. That's the start. But when you're able to look at the entire population, then you can be statistically significant. Sometimes you might see someone coming up with this story that they want to tell and then matching the data to it. And they'll just sift the cream of the crop off the top of the data without actually asking myself, is this statistically significant? Well, if I'm only pulling the cream of the crop off the top, then I'm going to get the best and the brightest. But I want to look at all of those medians, all of those means, everything in the middle, as well as those outliers too. So what AI can do, to your point, Ashley, is it can really bring in that sample set population that's actually representative of the whole. And I like that you're talking about that as well.
Yeah, totally. And you can you have a lot more of assurances that you are automating that sample set, right, with less bias than before, or just doing all of it as we said.
Yeah. I'm curious, Jessie, what do you think about all of this? Human in
I
the
love
loop
it.
and statistical significance as a data person and a data-driven marketing nerd yourself.
Oh, well, you have to have a human in the loop. I'm so for this conversation, and I'm just tuning into as well with what the audience is saying, and we're getting some really great comments. So we've got
Another David.
another David Pushkin. He says, agree, data is primarily about storytelling and using it to lead decisions. Agree with the panel here. While data is useful, human interaction is essential. Also, around using your data for visualizations and also sometimes trend analysis and modeling. Absolutely. I think we're all on the same page there. You have to have a human in the loop. Learn this the hard way. But I'd like to move into the next topic if we can. I'm a qualitative data person. I like the messy qualitative data that's going to tell me the story. We decipher through it. Of course, now that we have ChatGPT and Codex or whatever, Claude, I can feed it to the LLMs and it can help me decipher it a little easier these days. Whereas, back in the day, it was manual content analysis, looking at patterns and recognitions of words and themes. And yeah, to me, a lot of the times you can glean more data from qualitative than from the quantitative. And I know I can argue with the quantitative researchers all day on that, but I want to talk to you, Ashley, about this topic, which is turning qualitative signals into actionable data. Can you kick us off?
Yeah, sure. This one's really excited. There's two kind of facets to this topic that get me excited. First is turning qualitative data into quantifiable data, and then turning that quantifiable data into actionable data. So I think there's actually two steps and two parts of this process. So on the first one, turning qualitative data into quantitative data, Jessie, to your point, now you can take one piece of data. What we do at MelodyArc is we will orchestrate and construct a whole, like in the example I was showing you or telling about the customer journey across 8, 9, 10 different data sources where we have the story. With this story, we can start using AI to ask it questions that our insightful business analysts want to know. Did the customer experience any friction? I don't even have any good examples off the top of my head right now. How likely are they to come back? Did this meet our quality bar? Any, qualitative questions that you would typically have to train your team on, go dig, somehow do a categorization in a sample, et cetera. What we'll do is we'll take those questions, we'll turn them into quantitative output, as well as keeping the, individual customer journey to see if you want. And then you can get that quantitative output at scale across every single, whatever, I keep using customer journey, but whatever single task or process we're looking at. And I think that is huge. And again, I think the best example of this is, I'm sure that we've all been there where you get a question from someone on your C-level board or someone on your board who's like, is this happening today? And it's a question that it's unanswerable in the data. And so what you have to do again is go pull out 100, 1,000 different examples of this thing that's happening and try to give them an answer that is data driven. Whereas now with the way we can orchestrate data, you can just throw that question in the platform, run it, and see what's happened in the last hours, days, months.
Yeah, I like that. When I think about qualitative data as well, to your point about the hypothesis, your hypothesis can ask a great question to your population set along the customer journey. So for example, if someone's starting to explore your website, maybe they clicked on a white paper and put their email in, you now know that they are looking at certain information. So qualitatively, you can go back to that one individual and maybe recommend that they join a webinar or come to meet you in person or take that next step along the buyer journey, like start a trial. I'm curious, how do you take that qualitative data and apply something that's personalized at scale to each person along the journey of where they are in that journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like definitely the secret sauce, right? This is the reason we do analysis and metrics, is that we want to reach those customers that we can create more value for. And so one, by being able to orchestrate all this data, you get there faster. You can do it I guess we'll talk about in the next segment, but you can do it, within minutes, hours, days, whatever the right thing is. And then the question is how do we want to provide value to that customer? We've seen clients who have, said, okay, if they're visiting our website, they want to do this thing, and they get stopped at this point in the buyer journey. Maybe they're part of a cohort where we want to send and trigger some sort of automation to them that's personalized to their, they're in their kind of situation. At other times, maybe it is even higher value or even more important. Maybe it's a first-time buyer who had a bad experience, where we could actually trigger a human in the loop action, where you can have somebody who, a client success manager, a CSA, whoever it is, reach out to those people and help them, maybe win them back. And another really cool implementation is how can you even prevent that from happening in the first place? So in retail, maybe a package is stuck. Maybe that someone experienced friction, they had an out of stock and they really want to buy this thing. How can you get to them before they even experience that friction and action it so that they don't even realize something was wrong? I think it's the whole real.
Yeah, I love that. Well, at BDEX with the data enrichment platform and 2-segment, what's great is that we have all this qualitative data and quantitative data, and having a human in the loop. I like that example because once you have that cohort, for example, say you have an abandoned cart situation. Hey, I'm looking at this, young LA pair of shorts I really like. It's in my cart. I get this notification. Well, if that goes out of stock and you send me a notification, hey, you have an abandoned cart, and I go there and have a poor experience, how awesome would it be if someone called me up the next time they restocked and said, hey, just to let you know, we got a new drop of exactly what you want right now. And bringing that human in the loop, to your point, is such a valuable experience. I'd much rather a person call me than an AI and say, hey, I know you want these shorts, just to let you know, give an insider scoop, you had an abandoned cart, now we can drive you to get this purchase. Oh, by the way, we have this special, if you get 3, now you can get a 4th one for free or something. So there's a huge opportunity to just drive that impression. And I always remember those unique experiences where a human had an experience with me based on something that was data driven. So I'm curious, how often do you have an automation that actually says, hey, we want to bring, Jessie into the loop. We want to bring David into the loop and engage directly with our customer or maybe a cohort of customers?
Yeah. We really push our clients to think about what are their people really good at? What is the tacit knowledge of their people that they can bring versus what can just be automated because we know if this is true, then that must happen. And so as we think about when and how to bring people in the loop, it's really around some of these like nuances, harder things that may happen. So in the example of shorts, David, what if like the person who's transporting the shorts just lost them, and we can't quite figure out what's going on in the tracking data. We can't quite tell what's happening in the warehouse. We know the customers reached out to us, they haven't received it. That's something where we need to bring in a person to really use what they're really good at doing to problem solve on behalf of the customer. Whereas like if I'm a customer and something went wrong and you can fix it for me before I even know, I don't even need to know about it. I'm just delighted that it happened, as you said. And so that's like one sort of way to think about where you might want to start implementing a human in the loop versus where an automation or an AI agent will be sufficient.
Yeah. I like that. That's so great. That's a great consumer example. But Jessie, you're the CMO of a B2B data company. How do you include human in the loop in qualitative data to drive actionable steps for B2B customers that BDEX serves?
Oh, that's a great question. Thanks for kicking it over to me, David. But yeah, I mean, you have to read. You have to have a human in the loop who's going back through all the AI and either reading what's about to be published or reading what it's going to do. And yeah, that you can't like we humans have used tools since the beginning of time, and we can't replace ourselves with tools, but we can use tools. So you have to have the human there to continue to moderate the AI and make sure it's doing what we want it to do. And yeah, I think it can help us scale. It can help us do things fast. And I think we should. I don't think that the human in the loop should have such a chokehold on the AI that we don't allow it to let the value shine. And that value is really those repeatable tasks, those repeatable processes that don't take our human time anymore. And we should really let AI do that. And I think the human in the loop, they just need to be smart about, when, like we were talking about earlier, where you guys were talking about earlier, when do you let the automation step in and when does the human take over? And
Right.
Ashley, are you seeing companies like actually use data to identify that moment?
Yeah, certainly. We'll use data to identify when we know or don't know something. So even as the way the MelodyArc platform is orchestrated, if data can answer something, if straight up, if this, then that coding is the cheapest way to do any task today still, it just has the smallest amount of like right answers. And so if that's happening, then that's great. Let's use that. And then we kind of go up the value chain in terms of like who can do what. And so certainly like we see that all the time.
Yeah, could we eventually score for that? Just like not just
Mhm.
purchase intent or churn risk, but
Totally.
basically a human intervention signal that says, this is the moment where a real person creates more value than the automated touch point.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And also something you just said reminded me of something else that we see with our clients a lot is a lot of our clients have churn models, personalization models, things that are very specific to them. We would never want to replace that because it's something that it's their alpha. It's what makes their company great. And so we'll actually just use those inputs in the human in the loop process as needed. And there's just no need to recreate the wheel for certain things like that. And I would encourage like most people to keep that model.
Definitely. Yeah. Any other thoughts from you on this topic, David or Ashley, before we transition on?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that oftentimes we complicate things, and actually what I heard you say is simple scales, right? Business rules, if A, then B, is a great place to start. And you often need a lot of humans to come around a table to decide, oh yeah, A, then B. So simple scales. And once you have that base rule set, then data can also help you scale that out to more complicated and complex scenarios where you have, more automated and personalization. But thanks for that reminder of, hey, simple business rules often win in the midst of like complex technology, and humans can make those simple decisions easy, especially with MelodyArc.
Yeah, totally. And like, maybe it's not simple at first and we need to have a person do it and we need to understand how it lives in the wild, but we don't want to block implementing AI or implementing an orchestration system. So we'll loop in the person. You get a lot of that like intra-process data from those people. You get it actually out of their head, which is amazing. And then you can use that to make future automation decisions.
Right. Yeah, that's actually another great reminder is that we're living in a world where our AIs only have context as to what's in technology. So if it's in your head, it's not in technology, or if it's like in an old manual or a book somewhere, it's not going to be documented. So just that process of iterating with the human, draws out a lot of those. Oh yeah, I forgot about this edge case scenario, which is really important, contributes like a significant margin to our bottom line. We should probably include that. And only the human would know that. The AI wouldn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or what if it's a situation that has never happened before?
Right.
There's no corpus of knowledge for that. And you've trained your people to respond to that. So
Yeah.
and eventually, document it later.
That piece about getting knowledge out of people's heads is huge, basically, especially in B2B. So many companies have these people who just know how things work, but none of that knowledge is really documented or structured. Ashley, can AI help companies capture that institutional knowledge while, the humans are doing the work and then eventually turn parts of it into something repeatable?
Definitely. New situations happen all the time. And so as we're going through workflows, we would never want, at least our philosophy is we never want a manual process to be a blocker for allowing AI or automation or data to touch the rest of the process. And so as we can, even going through the process of doing that as an organization, you definitely learn a lot about your processes and I probably start writing more down. But by having people work on the same platform, you're logging a lot of that data. And then you can make those smarter decisions about when to automate and when not to. And maybe sometimes you don't want to. Maybe, Jessie, to your point about in B2B, it's too high risk. The contract values are too high. We want these people to have a human touch. Maybe we could automate something. We never will because of that value, but you actually have the data to make that decision in the future.
Yeah. The best data set might literally be sitting in someone's head.
Totally.
But let's transition into real-time data. Because the data in my head isn't real time. I can't like email it anywhere. Like not yet, at least. But
You can beam it to me.
Yeah, unless you have Neuralink, then yeah.
Data download. Using real-time data for better targeting. We love talking about this, especially here at BDEX, where that's what we do. We help advertisers, marketers better target their audience with data. And whether it's learning from their existing data, their first-party customer data, who are really their first-party customers, then go finding more like that. But there's also a lot of real-time ways to do better targeting. So I'd love to hear from you on this.
Yeah, cool. The first thing that comes to my mind when we were talking about these questions is actually to start to think about what kind of data is necessary in real time to create value for your customers and your business, and what kind of data can we wait an hour on? Can we wait a day on? Can we wait even a week on? Because there's a cost to getting that real-time data. There's a cost to running AI prompt after AI prompt after AI prompt after AI prompt for a real-time situation that may not yield any value. But there are times when capturing somebody who's doing something on a property is super important right now, and you're willing to take that. And so we encourage our customers to think a lot about what is the ROI of enabling analysis and workflows in real time versus ones that can wait an hour until the end of the day or what have you. And so it's probably not like the sexiest answer, but it is, especially now as people are really starting to scrutinize how much they're spending on AI, is something that is really important to think about, because you can get the same amount of value from certain things if you're running it every second versus end of day.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts on that, David?
Yeah, well, when you did this, Ashley, I was like, are you reading my mind? Because the first thing I thought was, what is real time? And second of all, is it necessary? And what's the cost of that necessary? And is there a return on it? So I won't cover those two because you already did. The third topic, which it wasn't first because it just didn't come to my mind, but it's equally as, if not more important, is the data appropriateness and privacy of that data. So there's some things like, I know that you know that I know that you know about it. And it's one of those things like, okay, but I don't want you to let me know that I know that you know. Talking about the data relevancy. So there's scenarios where like too real time or too soon could almost feel like an invasion of privacy, whereas too delayed would just be not cost effective or irrelevant, or maybe just delayed. So for example, in that scenario before, the abandoned cart, if you as soon as I click on the shorts, you're like, oh, hey, you know what? I'm getting a phone call or a text. I'm like, oh, wow, like I'm still on the website. And sometimes in a business to business scenario, that may make sense for like support or like, hey, I'm here to help. Or if you want price, if you're sitting, for example, 10 minutes on a pricing page, maybe a phone call from an AE that's available might be helpful. But in other scenarios where it's like, hey, here's family information, like, for example, a family member might be having a health situation, or there might be some sensitive new inventions that are getting created. And all of a sudden, you're getting this communication about that health or that private scenario. You might say, you know what, I really want that not to be so real time. So I'm glad that you brought up real time versus operational. You also brought up cost and ROI. And of course, privacy and data security and compliance is also equally as important. So yeah, these are all important topics that leaders in data really need to think about when they're going operational in real time.
Yeah, totally. My mind goes to like an old adage in customer support is like, how do you reduce the effort? And so how are you going to action the data, and when do you need to action the data by? What does your customer actually want from you? So your example of someone maybe being stuck on a pricing page and maybe getting the call from the AE is not so weird, because like I actually needed help. So it's delightful that you are reaching out to me almost without me having to do it to offer help. Whereas maybe if I'm buying something, maybe I'm planning on just checking the price so I can save up to buy it and come back later. And so it's almost like what is helpful and reduces effort in your customer client's journey. And that's how maybe we can back into how much data needs to be real time versus not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. I also think about too, and Jessie, you'll appreciate this, like, do I need every single piece of classification data about you in that real-time scenario? Like, I don't just, to get a little technical, I don't just want to select all the data about you and then offer that up. No, maybe we could reduce the cost of the data pull in real time by just getting exactly what I need just in time, like first name, last name, maybe your phone number, maybe like 2 or 3 details. And that, I think, often does need a human in the loop, to your point earlier. Jessie, what do you think about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that customer effort piece is so important because sometimes, the best use of data isn't really just creating another touch point. We want to ideally remove touch points, maybe go from 40 to 15. Ashley, are you seeing companies use AI and real-time data to actually identify where they can eliminate some of those steps from the customer journey?
Totally.
Good question.
Yeah, totally. I'm like, where are we going with this? I think what the best one that I can think of, I think I mentioned earlier, is the way we think about proactive support. So if we know, again, at its simplest, going back to David's shorts, which we keep going back to, if we know that those aren't going to get to him in the time he wanted, it's probably going to cause him to be upset about it. He's going to contact us. Maybe he's going to write a bad review. Maybe he's going to email an executive. He's going to probably create. We're going to have to go to the OMS and the warehouse and figure out and action that thing. He's probably going to have to return them. Maybe he doesn't want them. It's creating a lot more touch points for a customer journey that's gone bad than one that goes well. Experience because you got everything in the way you did it. And so if you can fix that in real time, Jessie, to your point, it is likely super high ROI to do so, and you should. And so I love that idea of how do we simplify the customer journey, because like as customers, we latch on to what is delightful and feels easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Well, we only have 10 minutes left. I think the three of us could probably talk about real-time data and better targeting for a whole hour. But before we transition into tech stack, do you have any last thoughts on using real-time data for better targeting, especially actionable advice for any marketers or growth experts listening?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I would definitely say like the first step in doing any of this is really taking a look at your organization, not how it is, but how it works today, but how you really want it to work, and understanding where that data lives and how often you need it and what you actually might do with it. And once you kind of get that into whatever grid, strategy deck, whatever you want to do with it, that's where you can really start seeing where implementing some of these different targeting or analyses and actioning off of that will actually like work for you. And it's best, I would say, to canvas the whole, you're as wide as you can go, so that you can understand which of these projects actually will create a lot of value versus ones that seem either cool and obvious, but actually might not create as much value near term. Because we could get excited about something that we could easily implement tomorrow, but it actually might be like so small and not worth it,
Yes. Absolutely. And then it takes a lot more energy and time and whatever.
Totally.
Yeah, I feel that. But we have to make sure we get to tech stack, because this is something we've asked all the guests who've come on Deconstructing Data. And since, of course, David, you're not usually on the show all the time. We got to hear some of your favorite tools these days too. But Ashley, what are some of your favorite tools that are empowering you and your team?
Yeah. First and foremost, our team eats our own dog food. So we'll use MelodyArc to execute a ton of internal tasks that we would look to, either buy or hire for, things like automated code review, UAT bots, things like that. I've even used it for some marketing stuff before. And then other than that, we're heavy users of Cursor. Even the business folks know how to use it to spin up things, which has cut out a ton of unnecessary time for a lot of things we want to deliver to our clients. And also because we tend to have, I was telling you all before, we tend to have pretty large implementations. They all tend to be, we want to make them as real as possible for our customers. And that's a way to do it. And so that was definitely not easy to do. But now that it's live, it's so incredibly almost magical for people who've been in sales before, to be able to spin up a bunch of stuff using your company's, cursor or CLI. Other things we have a bunch of agents running. I'm sure everyone has these, like earnings reports for your clients, pre-called notes, things like that. We're also doing, but I almost feel like those are table stakes these days.
Definitely. Yeah, I love all that. Cursor, that's cool that the whole team is using Cursor. That's awesome. How about you, David? What are some of your favorite tools in your tech stack?
Nice. Well, from a data model management, I do like H2O AI, which helps you manage predictive and prescriptive modeling from like more of a data science perspective. And then the second one is currently Hermes Agent, which is my orchestrator in the command line, and then good old file directories. So getting really good at understanding your file structures and also command line to be hyper effective. And then more recently, Manus went independent as of like this week. And so for the next couple of weeks, you'll be able to explore Manus for completely free. And so I like to bring all of my AI technologies together, all that deep, rich context that's stored in my file systems, both locally on machines, employees and staff machines, but also in the cloud. And so if you have 5-10 years of data, historical data, you can then import that into not only your local or in your cloud. And also at BDEX too, we were just doing this, eating your own dog food. I like drinking your own wine, but I don't want to just be drinking my own wine and being like, oh yeah, this is the best wine. It's the greatest wine. You should try this wine. No, I want it to be validated by customers as well. So eating our own dog food and looking at some of those S3 files, those real streaming files, as well as those data exports, Jessie, that we were looking at earlier today. Those are the cool tool tech stacks that I'm working on and enjoying today.
Absolutely. Yes.
Jessie,
Love
can I ask an inverse question of you, David? Because I have an answer too. Is what AI tools or AI uses of AI have you in your personal workflow found don't add any value?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you may have heard of Clay, and they came out with, one of the co-founders, Arun, came out today with a company-wide notice of AI Writing 101. And the first thing was read every line and make sure that it accurately represents your viewpoint. And so the first thing that, and I'm starting to get AI fatigue, is in AI presentations and AI text. It's like, okay, make sure that you have a human in the loop reading it. And it reminds me what Amazon and Jeff Bezos did back in the day, where every executive meeting and every meeting in the company starts with 10 minutes where you read a 6-page brief. And guess what? It requires you to actually think and use critical thinking and rhetoric and all of the wonderful skills that we learn, including logic and communication, and these soft skills to then share your ideas and create buy-in and get everyone on the same page if they haven't read it before. And I really appreciate that, because I just don't want to send out AI slop for the sake of getting it done. I want high quality rhetoric in visuals and in what I'm reading, and also in my tasks and automations. So I set one of my AIs to do some work last night, and I came back and I had like 57 files of markdown files. I'm like, okay, I started reading it. I was like, okay, cut the AI slop. Just like, give me the 2 or 3 bits that are going to move the needle tomorrow. So that's what I would recommend for folks out there. Don't create a bunch of cost or waste with AI slop. Read your AI slop, rewrite it in your own words, and I think you'll get a better human connection and response from the humans that are reading it. Oh, and one other thing I would also add of value is Cloudflare just came out with a new technology that's adding agentic commerce to the loop to say, like, some of these agents will be able to buy. That's going to be a whole nother episode. But yeah, you don't want your agentic commerce agents buying all of this stuff that you didn't approve either. So again, having a human in the loop, to your point, is incredibly important.
we're most of us are Amazon veterans, and we love the white paper process. And one thing I would add to what you said is, not only do I want to read something that someone's actually thought about, but the process of writing it is as much a mental exercise of like deciding what I want to do and what's right. And so shortcutting that with AI writing will cheapen any output that I make for a client or a new product.
Yeah.
And so it's
That's exactly right. Like,
easy to want to
don't
do,
waste
but
everybody
stop.
else's time reading your AI slop, because that's just disrespectful and to some degree unethical.
Fair enough. Yes, definitely. Well, great conversation. Love this. Anything more on tech stack, AI slop? Who knows? Anything else? Shorts? Any other topics we need to cover? Otherwise, this has been a
No.
really great episode of Deconstructing Data. Thank you both for taking the time to come and talk data with us here at BDEX. But yeah, before we go, Ashley, we would love to invite you to tell the audience
Yeah.
where they can reach you, how they can find you after the episode.
Sure thing. So for anyone looking at workflows, have large teams of people who are doing either data work or operational work, and believe human in the loop is the right answer. We love to talk about it. We're in such an early stage that, or the industry as a whole is at such an early stage that learning about processes, I love it. And so I'd love to talk to you about it, and kind of go down the orchestration path with you.
Amazing. Awesome. Yeah. And how about you, David? Do you want to let listeners know how they can reach you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn, and that's why we're live on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn Live is the only way that you can post long form on LinkedIn. And of course, all the viewer data, all the guests, all the audience members. So if you're on LinkedIn, just look up David Goecke, Goecke, for those on podcasts and audio. And I would love to connect with you and stay connected. And of course, share your latest post and write a creative human-led post. And LinkedIn actually marketing just came out with a bit that said, hey, if you're launching AI slop, we're going to remove you from the algorithm. So be authentic in your storytelling. And yeah, it's okay if you misspell some words too, but LinkedIn is the gold standard in professional relationships.
Yes. Errors are okay. At least we know you're human. Okay, well, great episode. Thank you both. We'll see you backstage. Everyone else, we'll see you next week. Same time, same place. So audience members, we want to invite you to get powered by BDEX. Build authentic connections with your audience and drive unprecedented engagement. So just imagine harnessing the power of AI to craft your audiences that truly resonate with your brand, ensuring that your marketing is hitting the mark every time. We want to bring you closer to those marketing goals, and we're eager to guide you. So just visit bdex.com. You can click on the Talk to an Expert button and get powered by BDEX. Deconstructing Data is the show that makes data make sense. Every Thursday, David Finkelstein and myself, Jessie Lezak, sit down with industry experts to unpack how data really drives marketing. We do this in plain language anyone can understand. If you want real insights, real conversations, and zero jargon, tune into Deconstructing Data live on LinkedIn every Thursday at 4:15 p.m. Eastern Time.